Welcome to Trial Site News Weekly Roundup. Today we will be discussing Anderson Regional Health Medical Center, which is joining the National COVID-19 Plasma Study and is seeking donors. Also, India's Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, launches clinical trial investigating use of Sepsivac in COVID-19 patients. All this and more starting now. Anderson Regional Health Medical Center in Mississippi joined the National COVID-19 Convalescent Plasma Study led by Mayo Clinic. With relatively high COVID-19 infection rates in Mississippi, the health provider has given some COVID-19 patients transfusions. Now, as to whether it is working, they report some potentially positive signals, but can't be sure just yet. Now, this regional health system has stood by residents in this generally rural community since the 1920s. It is still run by a descendant to the founder. So, Anderson Regional Health Center is located in Mariyln, in the east central side of the state near the Alabama border. With about 3 million residents, Mississippi is the 40th most populous state in America. Now, generally, a rural state, the Magnolia State, embodies layers of unique Southern culture, charm, and spirit. The state is also, unfortunately, known for a high poverty rate. In fact, the nation's highest is nearly 40%. About 345,000, or 11.5%, of non-elderly adults are reported to have no health insurance in the state. Now, the state reports 7,877 recorded cases of COVID-19, with over 300 deaths. Researchers have found that low-income and high-minority-populated areas are correlated in many cases, more severe pandemic conditions. And, according to data coming, African-American males appear to be impacted more adversely than other demographic groups. So, back to the study. Is it working? Well, the regional health provider has commenced with transfusing convalescent plasma to severely ill patients with SARS-CoV-2, the virus behind COVID-19 pandemic. Now, in regards to the investigational products, Dr. William Billups, Chief of Staff for Anderson Regional Medical Center, reports we were able to give it to our severely ill patients to hopefully help them clear the virus and have a better outcome. Now, according to the local media, WTOK, physicians at the hospital report positive signs with a treatment option. But Dr. Billup cautions that it's difficult to say at this point these patients are critically ill. But we've seen some encouraging observation in those patients. Now, the provider is seeking more donors to help more severely ill patients struggling with severe SARS-CoV-2 cases. Those that can give plasma must be able to donate blood and also need to be COVID-19 symptom-free for 28 days. Women must have no other history of pregnancy or be negative for HLA antibodies. Now, if you want to help by donating blood, and if you are based in the East Center, Mississippi, and have recovered from COVID-19, you can contact Mariyln Bell, director of the Anderson Laboratory. Her phone number is provided in the description below. Turning now to the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh, recently announced that it commenced a clinical trial involving Sepsivac, an immunomodulator, on asymptomatic coronavirus patients as the total number of SARS-CoV-2 cases rise in that nation. So India is currently pushing roughly about 40,000 cases and over 1,300 deaths. There is concern that the health apparatus won't be ready in that country. So who is the Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh? Well, it is a medical and research institution in India. It has educational medical research and training facilities for its students. It is the leading tertiary care hospital of the region. Now, there are more than 50 training courses in the institute. So, let's then shift to the drug Sepsivac. It's produced by Cadila Pharmaceuticals. Sepsivac is an immunotherapy treatment. It is the first in the word innovation in sepsis management, and the drug has received a green light from the Drug Controller General of India, or the DCGI, for immunotherapy treatment in sepsis or septic shock. The drug contains Mycobacterium, an immunomodulator, which is non-pathogenic mycobacterium. Consequent of the immunomodulator effect, Sepsivac effectively saves more lives in sepsis. Randomized trial in sepsis evidences 11% in reduction and a 55.5% relative reduction in mortality or deaths. Sepsivac reduces the days on ventilator, ICU stay, hospital stay, incidences of secondary infection, and days on vasopressor, and reduces the SOFA score, reports the company. So, could Sepsivac possibly become a vaccine? Well, according to Dr. Ram Vishwakarma, coordinator of the clinical trial at the PGIMER Chandigarh study, the immunomodulator Sepsivac will be administered to the coronavirus patients as a vaccine so that they don't develop the SARS-CoV-2 infection, reported ANI, a news agency. Now, Dr. Vishwakarma notes that the virus can live in a human for over a month. So the third trial will be on patients who have been treated and who feel better now. The hypothesis is that the drug will stop them from redeveloping the infection. If you'd like to learn about Dr. Ram Vishwakarma, Director, Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine, we will provide contact links in the description below. Meanwhile, Elego Health Research, a Texas-based research organization emphasizing models supporting clinical research as a care option, has inked an alliance with healthcare data specialists, Verily, part of Google, to support the Project Baseline COVID-19 initiative. In addition to numerous public health authorities in the Golden State and Governor Gavin Newsom, the team seeks to considerably expand COVID-19 testing and risk screening. And following the model of other nations such as Taiwan, wide-scale testing, contact tracing, and data transparency paves the way to a more stable and certain path forward. The party sought to leverage Verily's Project Baseline, launched in 2017, which sought to bridge the gap between clinical research and clinical care. Due to the significant data collection and secure health information storage options, it made sense to embrace the existing efforts for expanding COVID-19 testing in the state. Last month, the team kicked off a pilot program testing high-risk individuals at select San Francisco Bay Area sites. Samples were collected in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties, with more locations to open soon, reports Elego. According to a report by Jenny Spinner of Outsourcing Pharma, Elego is helping the group focus on supporting individuals and communities most impacted by the pandemic while working diligently to produce more data and ultimately knowledge about the novel coronavirus. Two researchers or physicians out of the University of Naples, Federico, one of the oldest universities in the world, introduced the use of two drugs classically used by dermatologists for the investigational use in fighting SARS-CoV-2. The two doctors hypothesized that the use of hydroxychloroquine, HCQ, and ivermectin may evidence a consequential and synergistic action if administered simultaneously, both for chemoprophylaxis and treatment of COVID-19. Now, why is HCQ being tested in so many clinical trials now against COVID-19? Well, the doctors posit that HCQ, the antimalarial drug, is an analog of chloroquine, CQ, considered an immunomodulator rather than immunosuppressant. They note that HCQ and CQ inhibit SARS-CoV-2 in vitro, with HCQ found to be more potent than chloroquine. They find that HCQ evidences antiviral effects at both pre-infection and post-infection stages. Moreover, they position that HCQ could interfere with glycosylation of angiotensin-converting enzyme 2, thereby reducing the binding efficiency between angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 on host cells and the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. They also speculate that HCQ could block virus fusion with the host cell via the inhibition of protease activity and cleaving coronavirus spike proteins. They include their reference sources for review and follow-up, making the claim that HCQ contributes to the suppression of the cytokine storm responsible for the disease progression to acute respiratory distress syndrome by a number of mechanisms, including the reduction of T-cell activation and differentiation, not to mention decreased production of cytokines by T cells and B cells. They offered no reference for this last point. Now, they concluded that their preliminary pros in regards to HCQ, that the drug is the center of a number of formal clinical trials to assess the effectiveness of the drug in interfering with SARS-CoV-2. So let's turn to ivermectin. Why consider this? Well, They start that the antiparasitic drug, frequently prescribed at the dermatology clinic as the primary treatment for lice, actually displayed antiviral activity. It serves to act as a specific inhibitor of important AB-mediated nuclear import. They claim that because of this, the drug suppresses the replication of several RNA viruses, including HIV and chikungunya virus, and yellow fever virus as well. Now, recently, they referred to the Monash University Australia research demonstrating antiviral action of ivermectin against the SARS-CoV-2 clinical isolate in vitro, with a single dose of the drug able to control viral replication within 24 to 48 hours. The authors suggested that the results were more than likely due to the inhibition of import AB-mediated nuclear import of viral proteins as evidenced in other RNA viruses. Now, in vivo studies have commenced in Egypt, Brazil, Iraq, and there is at least one in the U.S. The doctor using it as well as evidence from other locations such as the Dominican Republic. So, the hypothesis. The doctors hypothesized that HCQ and ivermectin could act in a consequential and synergistic manner. Hence, they suggest HCQ could behave as a first-level barrier in its potential ability to inhibit the entry of the virus into the host cell, while ivermectin could reduce viral replication if the virus actually does penetrate the first layer. Now, additionally, some other considerations is that HCQ is cheap to make and safe if dosed and monitored properly, while ivermectin appears to be safe and well tolerated with no serious adverse events according to research that they cite. The doctors acknowledge that the position is just a hypothesis and that there have been no complete in vivo studies. So, what are the current studies ongoing using ivermectin as of May 1st, 2020? Currently, the University of Tanta in Egypt now is conducting 3 clinical trials based on ivermectin, as in the University of Baghdad. A French biotech, Medincell, also commenced a clinical trials program targeting COVID-19 with ivermectin. Of course, there is the physician in Broward County, which we covered a few weeks back, who has been treating patients off-label with the drug, and the county signed off on that protocol. And finally, the last story for this episode of the Weekly Roundup is concerning Remdesivir. Now, it is important to note that Remdesivir has produced positive results. The trial site news research team has written many stories sharing promising observational snippets about the antiviral drug that was originally developed to address Ebola. There is enough evidence that the drug can, in fact, help the body fight the virus. However, the results of the recent Remdesivir clinical trial showcasing the positive results was actually the result of a last-minute change to the primary outcomes measures. Now, rather than focus primarily on the drug's ability to keep people alive, the protocol's primary outcome measure, the sponsors were given the green light to switch to the secondary outcome measure. That is, the length of time for surviving patients to recover just 2 weeks prior to the conclusion, and Dr. Anthony Fauci's proclamation to the world that this drug was, in fact, the new standard of care. As noted by recent Washington Post piece, death and other negative outcomes were moved to secondary measure status. They would still be tracked, but they would no longer be the key measure of Remdesivir's performance. So why change the protocol's evaluation criteria last minute? After all, this was declared an adaptive trial, and that is exactly what the trial sponsors made regulators, in fact, did. But changes are rarely made in this way in major clinical trials. They do happen, but seldom, and especially not days or weeks before the trial's conclusion and final federal government edicts, as reported by Christopher Rowland with the Washington Post. Now, according to some, the government rationale is easy to explain. With a novel, dangerous, rapidly spreading pathogen with such uncertainty around how its lethal effects even manifest in patients, that the NIAID's decision was rational on its face. Why not make the simpler secondary measure the actual primary outcome measure? Now, in the end, Remdesivir helped patients sick with COVID-19. On average, the time to recover declined in the Remdesivir group from 15 days to 11 days, or a 31% improvement. Now, that's a good start, but let's hope the standard of care can get considerably better. Now, if you want to read the entire Washington Post article, we will provide that link in the description below. Thank you for joining us this week for another episode of Trial Site News Weekly Roundup. We appreciate each and every one of you in our audience, and we will see you next time.